Welcome, everybody. We are finally getting back to another D.Gray Man chapter. Chapter 257 is just released, and we are going to talk about it. The 257th Night, Encounter Anomaly. And the chapter was really good. It covered something that I've been wondering about, as if any of you have listened to my chapter reviews in a while, for a long time, which is what happened with Lavi, Bookman, and the Noah, as that was literally a plot thread that has existed since the end of D.Gray Man Hollow. For anybody who was watching the anime, that is pretty much where D.Gray Man Hollow ends, at roughly chapter 207, which D.Gray Man Hollow came out in 2016, 10 years ago. And obviously the chapter came out before then. So we have been waiting for these answers for a long time. And I am so excited and happy with how Hoshino ends up explaining what happened. So all that said, let's just get into the chapter. And the cover page is really interesting. It kind of shows a thread of fate, or like a rope between Lavi and Alan, where Alan is in the front and Lavi's back is to him. It's implying like that Alan will be lifting Lavi out of the light because he is heading towards the light, and Alan is like not heading towards the light, which we will get to kind of at the end of the chapter, where Alan ends up saving Lavi. But I really like it. Obviously, great art. I think that's what we come to expect from any of these chapters. But it's very striking, and I like that it is symbolic of the chapter itself, when sometimes like they aren't. But anyways, back to where we were previously with this situation of Lavi and Bookman. And for anyone who needs a little bit of a refresher, because like I said, it's been nearly a decade since this plot point was really focused on. Even in chapter 250, we just see the Noah with Apocryphus. We don't see the Bookman anywhere. So essentially, during the Alma Karma fight, when all of the Noah are fighting and the Alma Karma stuff happens, some of the Noah kidnap Lavi and Bookman. They are trying to figure out what's the deal with the 14th Noah. It's a Noah that shouldn't exist, as well as literally killed them all in the 35 years ago. So they are all surprised when, during that arc, the Earl is like, I just want to be by his side. They don't really understand who Nea is or anything of that sort. So they are trying to figure this out. So they kidnap them two during this scuffle, as well as just a friendly reminder as well. Chozi gets poisoned, or Chowzi gets poisoned by Fidela with like his Popus stuff. So he's just kind of poisoned for whenever we see him again, which has been even longer than this point. So they aren't talking, but then at the end of season 2, or during Hollow, Apocryphus attacks Nea/Alan, and Rode decides to protect Alan, causing her dream to be temporarily broken and her to disappear, probably into her dream world. We haven't seen Rode since then either. And Desare, or the Desire Noah, is the person who essentially adopted Rode and has like a father complex towards Rode. So when he finds out that Rode is just gone, obviously not dead, but gone, and that there was clearly some connection between Nea and Rode, he is now way more anxious to find out. So he had started essentially attacking Lavi, trying to force Bookman to reveal his secrets, because there can only be one Bookman and one Bookman Jr. at a time. So by threatening the Bookman Jr., and with how old Bookman is, it kind of might force his hand, because he might not be able to train the next Bookman, seeing that it took several years following the Alan previous Bookman Jr. orb situation to free him, for the next Bookman to be born. And you could argue that's because of Lavi becoming part of Alan. So the next Lavi wasn't born until the orb was nearly completed. But we don't know. Maybe is instantaneous. Maybe it's at least 9 months later. Maybe it's multiple years, but it will eventually happen. Either way, it's a threatening situation. And we pick up right from there. So essentially, D.Gray, I think his name's Carlton, but I could be wrong, keeps attacking Lavi. And he's not calming down because his whole thing is desire. And he's and Tiki's trying to calm him down as well, being like, we're not allowed to kill the Bookman. As before 35 years ago, it was even stated they had a friendly relationship with the Bookman. But after whatever events occurred during Nea's coup, the relationship was severed for the most part. But obviously he can't calm down because of his whole father complex with Rhodes. So he just kind of keeps attacking Lavi. And it's like, so what if he's gone? There will be another Bookman Jr. eventually. That's how the world works. So just spill it. What's the deal with Nea? Which, ironically, we still don't know either. And we see Bookman that is really sweating right now because obviously he's already lost the previous Lavi, who he considered a son. And as we see in this chapter, and as we've seen just throughout this series to begin with, Bookman really does have a kind of fatherly relationship with both of the Bookman Juniors, including this Lavi. So he is rarely tempted to talk. And even Tiki and all these and the other Noah that are there are kind of trying to stop D.Gray or Carlton from attacking Lavi because they know this is kind of crossing the line, even though they do want to know why he is like this and what's the deal with Nea. But he's still not stopping. He's starting to kick Bookman instead of continuing to pummel Bookman Jr. with whatever his attack is. We really don't have enough info on what his ability is comparatively to Tiki, whose ability allows him to go through anything, kind of like pleasure to some extent. But while he's distracted with Bookman Jr. or Lavi, this is annoying because I've been using Bookman Jr. for the other Lavi for a little bit now, and it's the first time we see Lavi again, is able to reach his innocence, the big hammer, little hammer, and kind of engrave one of the marks and use his judgment, the fire and ash one, to create a giant snake of fire with his fire stamp. And it does hit D.Gray, but he's like, how dare you attack me? Trying to hold it back because it's a massive wave of fire. And Lavi kind of holds stern. He's like, I know you don't want me to be hurt, but don't tell him anything. Our secrets aren't meant for anybody. I know how much this matters to you. So don't tell him anything. It's for you to decide whether you tell him, and you clearly don't want to. So just get out of here, because Lavi is essentially settled to sacrifice himself in order for Bookman to survive, as being a Bookman is more Bookman's thing than it is Lavi's. So he's just like, please get out of here. I know it's impossible for both of us to get out of here. I'm already badly damaged because of what was just pummeling me for however long this occurred for. It was long enough that Tiki felt that Lavi's life was threatened. So he's like, at least you will be safe. And keep recording, because that is what a Bookman does. And Bookman is shaken by this. He's already lost a previous apprentice, previous Bookman Jr. He kind of doesn't want to go through it again. And D.Gray, who's very burnt right now, but typically, as we saw with Frode and other Noahs, it's very hard to actually keep them damaged. They just heal back up relatively quick. So he'll be healed by the next chapter, assumably, or the next time we see him, whenever that is. And he continues to pummel Lavi, and Lavi is starting to bleed out really badly. But he knows that he's willing to sacrifice his life, so he just continues to push forward and use more Helix energy, because maybe this is the power of woe. We don't really know what Helix energy does tend to do. But maybe in this desperate situation, he's able to channel more power. So he uses full power, while when he first uses it, it's maybe like it's like four streams of fire that turn into the snake. At this panel, it's 6. And it's a lot going on. And obviously, as he continues to push, Desiree or Carlton continues to push him, and he continues to spew blood. So much so that Bookman is essentially like, he's reached his breaking point. He's like, I can't let Lavi die. So he starts talking, but he talks in a language that isn't the main one. This could potentially be the language of the previous world that has been mentioned multiple times within D.Gray Man, but we don't know what language this is. We get it translated our way, but Fidela is like, what language is this? So I don't know if it's specifically what he first says is in normal language, but then his chant that allows him to pass on being Bookman is in a different language. It's not clear, but essentially what he says is, even if I told you about Nea, you'd have to also know about Mana. And to know about Mana, you kind of have to also know about the Millennium Earl in general, and not just one or two parts of him. So it would be useless because you don't know enough of the truth, which is what he's essentially saying here, as like, that's what the notes at the bottom say, because I do not know Japanese, and that's what the translation says for bees. And then he essentially bites his thumb and starts channeling an orb of assumably knowledge, because I believe, and this is how it is, like, Bookmen are able to absorb all this knowledge through themselves, and that is how they are able to retain why they are special, and why it's not just, I can choose an apprentice. They have to be born into the world. So he's like, it is no longer I who shall bury this truth, Diaru, which once again in the notes says it means inheritance. So he's essentially passing on all the wisdom that Bookman holds into Lavi. And it goes into his eye, under his eye patch. And he's like, with this, you are now Bookman instead of me. And he's like, what are you doing? Don't do this, Gramps, because he kind of knows what this will lead to. And instantly after this happens, Carlton, Desiree, literally blast a giant hole through Bookman's chest. Like, there's literally no chest there anymore. And he starts to bleed out. But before he does, he says, wisely, can you hear me? You clearly can't tolerate these circumstances. Lend me your hand. And when he does, wisely uses his mind abilities to knock out Tiki, Fidela, and Desiree Carlton. Starts with a K. I'm sorry if I've said that wrong like 30 times throughout this review. And they're all forced to lose consciousness so that Wisely can take Lavi away. And he takes him to the Zoogle bookshop. So before I get into the next part here, it's definitely interesting seeing the connection between Wisely and the Bookman. It definitely is something that seems like it was hinted at prior. Even just looking at chapter 250, the most recent one, it was stated that Wisely was the one who put the locks on all of the Noah, including himself, and he doesn't know why. So potentially he had a specifically close relationship with the Bookman. Maybe in the previous world, if the Bookman existed there, which we don't know if they did, Wisely, who encompasses the mind of the Noah, or the wisdom, is the one who remembers the original Noah and his relationship with Bookman, and why it matters so much that this occurs. And maybe even it might be sealed within him, but he does know that, like, it's part of his duty and it's important that it happens. It's also interesting because he was not in the room. So is this a form of telepathy that that Bookman uses? He could have been in the room, but he is not shown at any point within this chapter, and I don't remember seeing him in the previous one, 207. But it's a very cool shot of Wisely's like third eye opening and forcing all the other Noahs out of consciousness. So anyways, that is kind of how Lavi is able to escape. And like I assumed, and I feel like a lot of people assumed when we saw only Lavi in the Campbell bookshop, that Bookman sadly has passed away, which does suck because now that Alan is part of the previous Bookman, now he becomes like a way for potentially Bookman to have said goodbye properly to the previous Bookman Jr. or Lavi. And now we will never get that, but of course, that is the basis of tragedy to begin with. It's also important to note, and I don't feel like I brought this up at any other point, that Alan is kind of like the Naruto or Ichigo of the series, because now he is part innocence, part Noah, part Bookman. So he kind of is all three of the major forces we have been introduced to in the series. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays a role, but it definitely will, and probably is something that is being built up later on. That's not just he has both sides, but he also has the third side and how important Bookman Jr. will play later into the series. So Wisely, going back to where the chapter left off, Wisely takes Lavi to the Zuko bookshop, which is also just like a fascinating thing because it seems like it's a hidden location, and that just shows how much Bookman trusts Wisely, and Wisely probably doesn't use this connection that much, or like even then is like, I respect this is the process, it needs to be done, but I don't want to necessarily be focused on doing it. If I have to do it, I will do it. As Bookman said, you won't tolerate this. But I'm not going to push this issue. I'm never going to be like, I know where this is, so I am going to attack it and be proactive in destroying it. He understands the importance of Bookman probably more than we do. So essentially, Hashim, who is working the counter, is like, who would come at this late of a time? And he realizes it's Wisely, as the Zugals have such a vast range of informants and knowledge in their network. But Wisely, like I was saying, is like, I don't want to be known. I prefer not to introduce myself. And it could just be he's mourning Bookman rather than this as well, but it could go either of the two ways. So he's like, I apologize, but I was asked to lend a hand, as he brings in Lavi, who's in really bad condition. And that is where that story ends up. He gets taken into the Campbell mansion through the portal, or the gate, or I guess the arc is the best word, where he's been recovering and kind of been trapped, and he needs Alan Walker, or Alan can cure him. So Wisely realizes Alan will eventually go to the Campbell mansion, and Alan will then cure Lavi, and Lavi will be able to work as the Bookman again. So that's where we are, and Lavi is just kind of still unconscious in the bed. While this is going on, we eventually see your Campy acting very overeager. So this leads Joe to look out the window, and then they are essentially seeing Alan and company. So she's like, who are they? As they are coming close, and they finally reach the Campbell mansion. Alan is finally able to see his goal that we have been working towards for the last 20 plus chapters and multiple years, which is very exciting. They're all surprised that they finally made it, but before this happens, obviously Lucia knows the condition of Lavi, and is like, before you can kind of look into your history stuff, we have to save Bookman, which is why she's like, I have a request for you. I know it's not your main purpose, but someone is suffering from Noah poison, which he is able to cure. Now, I do not remember exactly where it's stated he's able to cure it. I know in the early chapters, due to being a parasite-type innocence, he's able to cure himself of Akuma poisoning. I guess it's specifically some types of Akumas versus others, like versus this being Noah poison, but maybe because he's a Noah, he's able to undo it. If anybody does know, feel free to say it in the comments. I just wanted to make sure I get this video out pretty quickly after being delayed as much as I was on the previous one. So Wisely was the one who told Hashim that Alan would be able to save Lavi. So while this is happening, your Campy is like sprinting over, or I guess flying over as fast as it can towards Alan, and just bonks him in the head. So much so that like catches Lucia off guard. And Lucia has to pull your Campy off, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't know why your Campy is doing this. And Alan's like, your Campy? And while it's getting moved away, he sees Joe. And it is revealed here that Joe is Bookman Jr.'s, the previous Bookman Jr.'s older sister, or at least somebody he calls his older sister comparably. So somebody he was very close with. But I imagine it is by blood because they both have the same silver hair, which is what Alan points out. We don't know for sure, but I'd say it's a safe assumption that they are related by blood. So it's like Joe also kind of recognizes Alan this way because Alan also has the same silver hair that they both did, and probably because like he encompasses the vibe and passes on the torch and all the stuff that Lavi or Bookman Jr. held, she kind of sees Bookman Jr. in him and is like surprised when she kind of is like big sis. But then she's cut away because we also find out here officially that Lucia is Joe's daughter, which I think might have also been covered the first time we see both of them at the Campbell Mansion multiple years worth of chapters ago. But I am sorry if I was wrong on that. And she's like, but she doesn't waste any time. She's like, I brought Alan and let's bring him to Bookman immediately, which Alan is surprised that the person that she was referring to was Bookman, who he still believes is the old, now sadly deceased Bookman and not Lavi. But obviously Joe is trying to figure out what's happening. Why are you here right now? She's like, I just saw him, as in like the previous Bookman Jr., her potential brother, and it's kind of in a daze right now. But Lucia's like, yes, I know you did. It makes sense because we just had this whole multi-chapter backstory where the previous Bookman Jr. is a part of Alan now, so it makes sense why you might be seeing your brother in Alan, but we don't have time for that right now. I'll explain at a later time. Probably will be done off screen because it just doesn't matter as much to pushing forward the story, but potentially their relationship after that might. So we could see it in the next chapter or 2 chapters from now, but we'll have to wait and see. I'm not sure if Hoshino would rather just fully push into the next backstory of Nea's backstory, because we don't know the beast or the truth yet about Mana and Nea or the Millennium Earls, so we can't. So even if we did learn about Nea, we wouldn't know enough to really know it. And I think that's interesting because Bookman's whole thing is kind of about us too. It's arguably we know less. We definitely know less than the Noah do, especially now that their memories of 35 years ago have been unsealed. But they're like, please come this way. We beg you, not as the host, as an exorcist, to save our leader or Bookman. And that is where that part of the chapter ends. But we end up cutting into Lavi's like subconscious and where he's cursed. And he's kind of drowning in what looks to be Helix energy, still kind of mourning the loss that just happened in his mind. It might have been a little bit of time now, but he hasn't woken up, of Gramps or like his father/grandfather in Bookman. He's like, where are you? Are you really gone? That's how you're going to say goodbye to me. I still need you. You still haven't, like, and he's just kind of drowning in his own despair, which is kind of the epitome, I guess, of what this Noah curse is doing to him. He's like crying, he's sinking, he's seeing the dead body of Bookman kind of continuously haunt him. And as this is happening, he's kind of getting dragged into the abyss of despair. And this is meant to be depicting despair on his side. So he's like, with you gone, what is going to happen? What's going to happen to your records? I know it's super important for you. Another thing that I feel like I didn't say earlier when I was referencing 207 is like, Bookman did feel kind of trapped because he's like, this right now with what's happening with Alan, what's happening with everyone moving and all the pieces moving to place, this is the history that the Bookmans were destined to record. So probably whatever the Bookmans still record everything, but there was a certain point that they are meant to record. the key that they have been working towards recording and why it's so important to record all this. And they have to record everything that led up to it, but they need to be there for that moment. And in Lavi's mind right now, he's like, you weren't able to do that. So what are you going to do? How you just stopped? What's going to happen? Who's going to record now? He's the bookman, but he doesn't feel like he is ready to be bookman. So Lavi is kind of drowning in this stress, and he's like, what did you die for? Did you really die for me? Am I worth your life? So as he continues to drown, we see Alan's hand or another hand pull him out, where we end up seeing a panel of Alan over Lavi, grabbing his hand in both real life and in his dream or his kind of despair of being the hope that he's looking for. And Lavi begins to wake up. And he's like, if I must live, I'm going to respect your legacy. And I'm going to keep recording and live that is not your curse, but your only hope. And that is kind of the end of the chapter, where now we have a lot of the people back in place. We haven't seen Khanda in a little bit, but obviously we were introduced to the Khanda plot point, where Mana, as in Alan's Mana from his backstory, who's also Mana the Earl's body is no longer in his casket. So all the pieces are starting to move. And while I'm not sure how much more of the story we have, I think we have a lot as far as like what's going to happen. I'm not sure how many more arcs there are, and we're slowly moving closer into the end game, which I am very excited about. If you stayed the whole time, let me know your thoughts on the chapter. Do you have any theories? If you know the name of the Desire Noah that I just kept forgetting and didn't feel like looking up, let me know in the comments as well. And if you stayed the whole time, feel free to subscribe. I'm so happy. As I think the last video I said, I was finally 1 subscriber over the number of videos I had. And now I'm like, at the time of recording this, 13, 14 subscribers more. So it's cool to just see the effect. And I appreciate all of you being here and listening to just me ramble about D.Gray Man. And thank you. I know like this is my first video of the new year, and ideally there will be more, and maybe I'll have some theory videos sprinkled in, but I'll see. It's just, I try to do this when I have the time to. And like whenever I have a chapter comes out, I feel like I have to do it because it's just new D.Gray Man content to consume. Well, thank you once again, and have a good one till the next time.